So let's look at the song Circles. Circles is a song that was very much led by the guitar riffs that I'd been working on, and it's a compound time signature that adds up to 23 beats. You could call it 23/8 if you wanted. It's broken down into 2 bars of 9/8 and then 1 bar of 5/8. And I was working on these guitar riffs, you know, really following quite spiky rhythms, if you like. It was like those last two being, you know, 2 patterns of 5/16 in the 5/8 bar. Around that time I was rehearsing for King Crimson's tour, and some of the sounds I was playing around with was playing the rim of the drum as if you're going to play a cowbell. I put some gaffer tape on the rim here to just take off some of the high frequencies, and I really mimicked what the guitar part, the tapped guitar part, was doing. I closely followed it with the rim and the snare. So this is what the verse sounds like. Now into the chorus of Circles. This is again another compound time signature, which is made up of 5/8 and 3/4. And again, it's a pattern that was led by the guitar riff. So I was just kind of copying as best I could what the guitar pattern had dictated, and this is what the chorus sounds like. Now, for the piano solo in this song, we go back to playing in the original time signature, the compound time signature of 23/8, broken down again into 9/8, 9/8 and 5/8. But really inside those bars, inside the 9/8 bars, I'm playing really like 2 patterns of 9/16. As I do in the 5/8 bar, I play 2 patterns of 5/16. And the underlying rhythm in that, in the 9 and the 5, is like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the kind of pattern I'm singing to myself as we're kind of navigating that that compound time signature. So I'll just play you that section with the drums and the bass, and you can hear what we came up with. And that's the basic drum parts for Circles. Now for the song Source, this was a piece that Rick and I had written quite a long time ago. And in fact, in the verse section, Rick used a little piece of my drumming originally from Life. You know this part that goes, it's like a tricky little 4/4 part. And anyway, he took a sample of that piece of drumming and chopped it into 7/8, and it sounded quite nice in the verse. But you know, I said to Rick, "We've already used that, so it would be obvious where it came from. I need to think of a new groove in 7 for the verse of this song." I had about 20 different goes at trying to think of a groove that I liked, and in the meanwhile, I was working on another session, and I came up with a part that had, I think it was in 3/4 actually, and it had snare drum accents, but like an echo, a 16th note echo on the tom, and I quite like that. I can't even remember what that song was. It was something like something like that. Anyway, it didn't get used in the end, and I still had that fresh in my memory, that kind of echoing the accents. The first time it echoes from snare to tom, the second time from tom to snare, and then the third time from snare to tom again. And I really liked that kind of shape. I hadn't really heard much of that before. So I played, you know, I jammed this piece in 7. I still tried to keep a little bit of that original, you know, that little opening triplet thing from Life, and that's how the piece pans out. There's 8 bars of 7/8, and then 1 bar of 4/4, and that makes up the whole cycle of this verse pattern, and this is what it sounds like. Now, for the chorus of Source, you'll notice that the 3rd bar has got a strange little skip in it. It appears that the 3rd bar starts 3/16 too early, but it is in fact just a 3/16 notes displacement. If any of you are familiar with my Rhythmic Illusions book, you'll particularly know what I'm on about. After the second backbeat on the 2nd bar of 4/4, immediately the next 16th note sounds like it's the beginning of a new bar, but it is just an illusion. I'll play it for you slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's got that kind of strange skip to it, like the drums have gone out of sync, but you know, it's just a kind of rhythmic effect that feels like someone's pulling the carpet out from under your feet. This is I'll demonstrate it now with the actual music. A little bit later in the song, there's a little solo section where the drums take a solo, and it's over a compound time signature of 19/8, which is split up into 7/7/5, a bit like the tune 19 Days. After I play the little solo, I get into kind of playing a groove over that compound time signature, and this is what it sounds like. The tune Last Call is based around a triplet subdivision, and I wanted to make a slightly unusual variation to that. You know, a lot of Western music, when it's in triplet form, features heavily the first and the third of every triplet, like with swing and like with shuffle. It very rarely features the middle triplet, but when you listen to some African music, they like to pick out the middle triplet, and it gives it quite a nice little spice. So I wanted to find a groove that was like a hybrid of a half-time shuffle, but it had occasional middle triplets in it. So this is what I came up with. So you can hear in the first bar of that 2-bar cycle, The second bass drum note is the middle part of the triplet, as is the first snare drum hit is a middle part of a triplet. And then the second bar, it's much straighter, it's on beats 1 and 2, and the snare's on beat 3. I quite like songs that start off with a rhythmic mystery, so I decided to leave the hi-hat out of the very beginning of the song in the intro, so you just heard that bass drum, snare drum thing, the pattern that I just played you, and it doesn't become obvious what the subdivision is until the verse really kicks in and I start playing those quarter notes on the hi-hat. Then you realise the whole thing's in triplets. So from the intro it sounds like this. Now for the chorus of this song, it starts off with the same triplet subdivisions, and I'm still thinking of it in 4/4. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's still got that half-time snare, but I introduce a 3/4 polyrhythm with the hi-hat. So I play the hi-hat every fourth triplet. Then I decide to change gears, and keeping the same quarter note pulse, I change subdivisions to 16ths, and then I start playing a 4/3 polyrhythm between the bass drum and sometimes the snare drum. It's playing every third 16th note. And I switch between those two feels, and it might feel like the tempo's changing, but in fact the tempo and the pulse are the same all the way through. And then as the chorus reaches its climax and I bring in more and more of the 16th note 4/3 illusion, I finally join in with the bell, that 4/3, and just for one bar it sounds like the tempo has really changed, although it hasn't. It was just a nice way to really build up the end of the chorus. So I'll play you from the beginning of the chorus so you can see what I'm talking about. So here's a look at the song Crisis, and before I get into the patterns that I played in Crisis, I want to just quickly look at that drum fill that opens the song. It's a bar of 4/4 and it goes like this. Now it appears that there's quite a lot of notes going on in that fill, so I'm going to break it down for you in the simplest way I can. The very opening phrase, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to show you how I use substitutions inside a fill. Now, if I take out the substitutions that I'm applying, we're left with a much simpler fill. Or let's just take that those first two beats. So. So it's like 6 notes. It's triplet 16ths. 3 and a 4 and a... Of course, those 2 shots on the snare at the end there are the first 2 16ths of beat 2. Now, that first run of 6 notes, when my hand comes across the hi-hat, I'm going to play a double note on the hi-hat. 3 and a 4 and And then with that one bass drum hit, I'm going to turn that, I'm going to substitute that for two bass drum notes. So, 3, 4. And that makes the whole, a little phrase like that, it makes that much easier to think of, because I'm really just concentrating on the triplet sixteenths. I'm telling my hands, you know, on a kind of down in the engine room, I'm telling them to play a double on that particular note on the hi-hat, and I'm telling my feet to play a double on the bass drum. And kind of thinking of the fill in a much easier way, on a much easier level, means that, you know, it's easier to remember, it's easier to stick, and more importantly, it's easier to keep it in time, because I'm not thinking of all those notes. I'm only thinking of the top layer of it. I'll see if I can play the whole fill a bit slower for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. So onto the verse groove of Crisis. Now this is a groove in 5/4, and it features, you know, open hi-hat and snare drum on beat 2 in both bars of the 2-bar cycle. In the first bar, you've got that open hi-hat and snare drum on beat 2, and then the floor tom on beat 5. And then in the second bar, you know, that open hi-hat and snare on beat 2, and then, you know, a couple of kind of funky syncopated snare drums that happen a bit later in the bar. And that's the basic kind of concept, if you like, of the verse groove. So I'll play it for you now. Now, in the chorus of Crisis, it's quite simple. It's a bar of 4 and a bar of 5. That makes a kind of compound of 9/4, I suppose. I'll play that pattern for you now. Well, that's about it for specific drum parts in Crisis. The whole second half of the song is like a sort of open solo in 5/8 between the drums and the guitars, and we just kind of start off low and just keep building it and building it in intensity until we reach the sort of peak at the end of the song. Now, Faith is a tune that Rick had written quite some time before I met him, and he did present it to me even for the first album, Drop, but for one reason or another we never got round to finishing it. And during the recording of the second record, you know, we were still looking for a kind of mellow, kind of ballad sounding song, and so we revived it. Now, when Rick presented it to me, it just had these kind of floaty guitars playing in 5, and it gave me an opportunity to do really what I love the most in drumming, and that is to design a rhythm that's just unique for the song. So I spent some time, you know, trying different things out over these floaty guitar lines. The verse and the chorus are in 5. I wanted to put the backbeat on beat 4, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I pedalled the hi-hat in groups of 3/16, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't want to keep rolling the groups of 3 over the bar line. I wanted it, you know, to have a repetitive pattern to it, you know, per bar. You know, I play these kind of the 16s with rolls and things, and sometimes I brush the hi-hat with my left hand, and so this is what I came up with. just wanted to add to that when you're listening to the recorded version of Faith, you'll notice in the verse that every 2 bars on beat 2, there's a cymbal splash. It's actually 2 China cymbals on a hi-hat stand. I had to overdub that mainly because I ran out of limbs to play it whilst I'm playing all the other stuff. Now for the chorus, you know, I opened it up to play on the ride cymbal. I still wanted to keep that groups of 3/16s going, so I play the first 3 on the bass drum, the next one on the tom-tom, the next one is the backbeat on the 4, and then I off the back of that snare drum hit, I played 2 other groups of, well, a 3 and a 2 on the toms, just to keep that kind of group of 3/16s rolling. So this is what it sounds like. Now for the middle section of Faith, we'd actually stolen a piece from one of our other demos where we had a section that we really liked. It was in a slower tempo, but we thought it would work well as a kind of like a middle section of Faith, and we brought it in. The drum part is really a kind of non-specific drum part. It's much more of a texture, you know, like an atmosphere from the toms. I play the toms in 4/4, you know, quite lightly, picking out little melodies as if I'm playing a marimba or something, and it seemed to complement very well what Rick was doing with the guitars and the vocals. You know, a very ethereal kind of atmosphere going on during that section. Now for the outro is in 3/4, and I kept the 3/16s going, this time with the right hand on the hi-hat, which obviously resolves nicely. There's 4 of those groupings, it becomes 4/3. So I stuck a snare drum in quite an odd place for the outro part, and when Rick heard it, you know, he took his, for his bass line, he took the hi-hat 3/16 as if it was like a new 4/4, like a new tempo, and he played his bass line off that hi-hat part. So it sounds like this. So I'm going to demonstrate for you some of the rhythms that are used in ska. The verse is in 11/8, and I was thinking today, you know, there's a lot of odd time signatures on these records, and it's strange because when I was a kid, I'd get lost even playing in 3/4. I really didn't understand odd time signatures. I probably didn't understand time signatures, really. I just thought everything was in 4/4. I remember going to a rehearsal of the National Youth Jazz Orchestra when I was about 12 or 13, and there was a kid there called Graham Ward, an amazing drummer, and he was 2 or 3 years older than me, and he sight read a piece in 11/8, and I looked at the chart and I thought, I don't even know what 11/8 means, and I think it was this fear and fascination with odd times that made me want to, you know, delve into them a bit more and try and discover what they're all about. You know, some people have come to me and said, I can't play odd times at all. And I say to them, can you play a group of 3? And they go, yeah, sure. And I say, can you play a group of 2? And they go, so, okay, you can play odd time signatures, because you can break down all the odd time signatures into groups of 2 and 3. Quite often there's a sort of secret key to odd time signatures, especially when the number's bigger than 4. You know, people don't count 1 to 17. If it's 17, 16, they don't count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You know, you count in different groups. You know, as I've explained in other pieces, you know, if there's a pattern in 7, you might count it as 2 groups of 2 and 1 group of 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. You know, and even in the larger time signatures, you can still break them down to smaller, kind of more digestible pieces. And there's nearly always this little secret key to every odd time signature, with how the guys in the band are thinking of it, or how the person who wrote it is thinking of it. You know, they're thinking of it as a bar of 4 and a bar of 5, 8. You know, 4, 4 and 5, 8, and they're kind of feeling it like that. And you just have to work out what that key is. In the verse of Scar, for instance, in 11, 8, I think of it, I'm kind of thinking of it as a bar of 3, 4 and a bar of 5, 8. So at no point am I counting to 11, and in fact at no point am I even counting. I'm just feeling a bar of 3, 4, and then I'm feeling, you know, the 5, 8 thing. And the drum pattern has, you know, a kind of logic to it. It has a kind of melody to it that I'm singing in my head, so I don't get lost along the way. Now, I'll play that 11, 8 pattern for you nice and slow, and you can see what I did. So you can see there, you know, there's a sort of skeleton part that's quite important, which is, you know, the first couple of bass drums, that open hi-hat, and that snare drum backbeat. And as long as that's there, that kind of main core part, you know, I play around with some of the other kind of elements and play little fills and rolls. But as long as that part is kind of structurally sound, shall we say, then I know that I'm not going to get lost in this 11/8 pattern. Now for the chorus of Scar, I actually managed to dig up a really old rhythmic idea that I'd thought of a long time ago whilst I was writing the Rhythmic Illusions book, and it's in 4/4, and it's a 2-bar pattern in 4/4. The snare drum is on beat 2 and 4 in the first bar, and it's on beat 3 in the second bar. But, you know, quite quickly I start dropping in subdivisions on the hi-hat, which are, you know, every 3rd 16th. So it starts to sound like I'm just about to kind of modulate off into another feel. So it's like a little illusion, but within a 2-bar 4/4 pattern. So I'll play you a slow version of that. Now with the chorus, you'll notice that in the first chorus, Rick's guitars actually start on the 2nd 16th, and in the second chorus they start right, you know, on the bar line. So I'll play the first chorus for you now so you can see what I mean. 1, 2, 3, 4. I never wasted my time missing anything. No regrets along the path that's straight and narrow. Over the time we realize is that what we've learned is to here's the second chorus, and you'll notice that Rick's guitars actually start with me. And you know, we liked both ways. We couldn't decide which way to do it because we liked both of them, and both of them threw up, you know, nice little syncopations against the ride cymbal. So we said, well, look, let's just do the first chorus like this and the second chorus like this. What's the big deal?
1, 2, 3, 4.
I never wasted my time in singing. No regrets along the path that's straight and narrow.
Now finally, right towards the outro of this song, I get to play that original pattern on the hi-hat, and you know, Rick actually joins in some of those 3/16ths on the bass, so it really sounds like we're modulating off into a different tempo, and then he kind of goes from playing the 3/16ths to playing a kind of funky 16ths pattern. So he kind of steps both sides of the fence and kind of bridges the illusion, shall we say. So this is what it sounds like. For the song Break, this started as an idea. I was messing around at a sound check once, playing a 6/8 rhythm, and I was trying to see if I could, you know, get quite a lot of left foot action going in the 6/8 pattern. You know, sometimes splashing the hi-hats, and sometimes doing 30-second note anticipations, which would make it sound like I was playing inverted doubles. Now, an inverted double is one that goes like this. Rather than, so I was just replacing that first right, the one before the accented right, with a left foot. And I was trying to make a 6/8 rhythm out of it. Anyway, this became, you know, the basis of the rhythm, you know, in the intro for Break, and I'll play you what I came up with. Now for the verse of Break, I wanted to use that 16th note anticipation before beat 4 in 6/8. So instead of it going, I wanted it to have that anticipation. So here's the verse pattern.
Fracture of line, sensation that I've lost profound. An empty glass, throw glass.
In the choruses, I liked the idea that instead of having a downbeat, we had a big accent on beat 2 in the chorus. It just gave it a nice kind of offset start, if you like. So here's the chorus. Now, the little outro to this song is probably my favourite bit on the whole album. Purely by accident, Rick and I played a little, well, it's a 4/3 30-second note syncopation thing that you can play when you're playing in 6/8. You can play 4 against every 3 hi-hats, and it gives you a nice kind of changing gear feeling. And Rick actually played something opposing that, and it came out so nicely that we repeated it twice in the outro. This is what it sounds like. Beyond the A is a song that kind of does the reverse of what a lot of the other songs do. A lot of the other songs have odd time signatures, which sometimes I try to disguise to make them look like, or make them sound like, they're in 4/4. Now, Beyond the A is the exact opposite of that. The whole song is in 4/4, but I subdivide bars of 4/4 in, quite strange ways. In the verse, for instance, it's a pattern of 9/16 and a pattern of 7/16, which of course added together becomes 16/16. And you could tap your foot in 4 through it. Now, the 9/16 and 7/16 is like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And after I play 9/7, 9/7, 9/7, the 4th time round I play 7 plus 9, and that just turns round at the 4th bar. And this is what it sounds like. Now for the tiny bridge section, I play a pattern of 2 5s plus 6. So you could think of it as 10/16 plus 6/16. You could think of it as 2 5/16s plus a 3/8. But what it all adds up to is basically 2 5s and a 6. Now, the middle section, this is a pattern that goes back to 1981 when I first met one of my drum teachers, Dave Cutler, and he showed me a pattern which was 2 7s, 2 5s, 2 3s and a 2, and all that adds up to 32 beats. So that's 2 bars of 4/4. 2 7s, 2 5s, 2 3s and a 2. So over this section, I'm thinking in, I'm kind of singing that to myself as I'm playing this pattern, and so this is what it sounds like. Now later in the song we go back to that verse section, the 9/7, 9/7, 9/7, 7/9, but I play 4/4 through it, whilst Rick keeps up that 9 and 7 pattern. So just for a few bars I play 4/4 through that section, just so if anyone was wondering whilst they were listening what the time signature was, they'd be able to see the other side of the illusion in the fact that the whole thing's in 4/4. Now, onto the song I. This is another song that is based on, a bar, at least the verse is based on a bar of 12/16, or 3/4, or 6/8, or in this case, more like, 7/16 plus 5/16. It kind of depends how you want to count it and how you want to feel it. So if I was thinking of a 7 and a 5, that's kind of how I'm feeling the verse. This is what it sounds like with the music. Now for the chorus of I, this started as an improvisation high up on the bass guitar where I was kind of tapping with two hands, and it had this nice little triplet thing in it. It turned out that it was a pattern in 7, so when I came to compose the drum part to that, I copied the triplet thing with the hi-hat, and I found a little rhythm that I liked. It had that kind of 16th note echo on the toms after a couple of the snares. And this is what it sounds like altogether. Now for the solo section, it's in 13/8. I kind of think of it in 26/16. I think of the first part as 12/16 and played like a half-time shuffle. And then 2 patterns of 7/16. But in those 2 patterns of 7/16, instead of just going straight 7, boom, boom, bat, boom, boom, bat. In that first pattern of 7, the first snare drum, I delay it by an 8th note, so it's on beat 7 of 7/16. Boom, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba. I'll play the 2 patterns of 7 for you. Now, I'll put the whole thing together for you and hear what it sounds like. Goodbye is of course the last song on the album Circles, and it's a piece that Rick and I had worked on quite a long time ago, and we decided to revive it for this record and to give it a new lease of life by playing some kind of drum and bass inspired rhythms. The piece is basically in 7/4. There's a couple of bars here and there that aren't. Here's what it sounds like in the music.
Go, go.
for the solo section, I open it up onto the ride cymbal, and I'm still playing the same basic sticking as I did in the verse, and it gave me a chance to add some 4-stroke roughs on the bass drum. I guess it's a triplet plus the next note, and the two kind of spaces in the 7/4 bar that I thought was good to put, you know, that triplet bass drum pattern was on beat 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And on the next bar, the triplet running into beat 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now here's a little piece of the solo section, and you can hear where those bass drums go.